Welcome to the kill-death ratio, where I count all my kills and all my deaths. Today, I'm playing Silent Hill 2, developed by Team Silent within Konami and released for the PlayStation 2 in 2001. Its mature examination of morality, grief, trauma, and self-destruction, along with its setting and well-written characters, makes it one of the best horror games ever made and one of the best pieces of horror across any medium. We follow James Sunderland after he receives a letter from his deceased wife Mary, drawing him to the excessively foggy town of Silent Hill. As he searches for answers, he encounters numerous nightmares and some of the most iconic monster designs in gaming. How many of them can James take down during his search for Mary?
What the hell is it? It's not human.
I select normal difficulty for both gameplay and puzzles, and we open with our protagonist coming to grips with what he just left behind in the stalls of this rest stop. He wonders out loud if his wife Mary could really be here, and heads outside where James overlooks the large lake while his wife's voiceover reads the letter she sent him.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill.
The problem is that Mary died from a disease 3 years ago. However, James is still mourning and grasping at any shred of hope remaining to see his wife again. Her letter mentions a special place that James can't quite figure out since the whole town of Silent Hill meant a lot to them. Oh wait, there's a postscript at the bottom. It says, waiting for you to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. James doesn't understand what that means, but he recalls a memory by the lake and wonders if she might be waiting for him there. With the road blocked off, we snatch the map from the driver's seat and apparently content with leaving his car door wide open, we begin our walk on the nearby Toluca Lake Trail. At the end, we enter a graveyard and scare the hell out of the first person we've seen in this strange place. James tells her he's lost and asks how he can get to Silent Hill, but why do I feel like she's antagonizing me?
Lost?
She basically calls James a dumbass by saying there's one road and if I follow it, I'll get there. But she warns against going because there's something wrong with the town.
And it's not just the fog either.
Okay, I got it. I'll be careful.
Maybe feeling a little bad about cutting her off, he explains he doesn't care if the town is dangerous and intends to go there anyway to look for someone. She's actually there looking for someone too.
I'm looking for my mama.
And also her dada and brother. They part ways here, wishing each other their best. The next section is a long trek into town that builds up the atmosphere as we hear strange noises beyond the fog alongside Akira Yamaoka's haunting soundtrack. Shortly upon entering the town, we find some smeared blood on the street and a twitchy shadow disappearing into the fog. Since James couldn't care less about his own well-being, we chase down the creature inside a blocked-off tunnel, feasting on a dead body. James picks up a wooden plank and earns his first kill of the game, bashing this creature known as a lying figure until it stops moving. Like in the previous game, I pick up the radio which will go off when enemies are nearby, totaling another 10 kills while I explore the town. This time, the team got to tour American towns more extensively during the development phase, with San Bruno, California being used to model parts of Silent Hill. While the first game was a huge success, it left the team unfulfilled due to technical limitations of the PlayStation. Because of the power of the PlayStation 2 and Norihito Hatakeda's work on the engine for the game, Team Silent was able to achieve the movie-like quality they were striving for and tell a more complex story. Returning CGI director Takeyoshi Sato felt they should expand more on the history and events of the town itself. He also helped conceive the plot and theming of the game, pulling a ton of inspiration from Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, the work of David Lynch, and the film Jacob's Ladder. Eventually, I find myself inside Neely's bar, where I copy some identifications on the map to my own. Before leaving, I take note of the message left on the glass and follow the markings on the map that lead me into the Woodside Apartments, where I smash and bash my way to 23 kills against the lying figures and a new enemy that looks like something Sid from Toy Story would create. Exploring this rundown building introduces us to several new characters. The first one being this bratty little shit that runs off after kicking a key out of our reach and stomping on our hand before leaving us Nelson style. We get our first glimpse of the most recognizable monster in the series as he stands there and stares at us. Or maybe he's looking at his feet. You can't really tell, but you can absolutely tell he's committing some heinous crimes against these mannequins. James hides nearby and lets off some closet pops to convince Pyramid Head he should probably leave. Otherwise, he's gonna wind up looking like this fella. Masahiro Ito was the primary artist behind the first 3 Silent Hill games and is responsible for its signature style. All that rust and blood just makes you want to lick the walls, don't it? During development, he approached the monster designs with a theme in mind: distorted humanity and soured flesh. Pyramid Head wound up being the first creature created for this game and has since become the mascot for the Silent Hill series, which was unexpected since the executives at Konami and many members of Team Silent weren't a fan of the creature. After that hellish experience, James realizes he needs to live life to the fullest, which includes porch piracy. Some juice do be sounding pretty good. James, what the fuck, man? You threw that entire six-pack down the garbage chute just to pick up a coin and read an article about a child murderer named Walter Sullivan? You make me wanna puke. Oh, he beat me to it. We meet Eddie while he vomits and decide this is the best time to strike up a conversation about that guy stuffed in the fridge a couple rooms over. Eddie claims he ran into this apartment to avoid the monsters outside and found bro super dead in the kitchen. He says he isn't from here, but before he can say anything else, his stomach churns and he hugs the toilet some more. James starts getting a little weird here.
Something just brought you here, right?
Yeah, the clam chowder brought me here.
Alright, well, be safe. The next room over, we admire the graffiti and football posters. Oh, I guess I'm the only one. After that exchange is finished, we make our way to the fire escape that doesn't exist because they knocked it down to make way for another apartment building. What's the first thing we do in this new building? Stick our hand in shit to pull the save combination that provides us with a shitload of bullets. I crush this creeper real quick in the hallway and begin searching the building, eventually finding a room containing the woman we met in the graveyard. James notices the knife and tries to talk Angela down. He distracts her by asking if she found her mother.
Did you find your mother?
Mama.
Fine, your mama. But she hasn't found anyone yet and apologizes for her state of mind, claiming she's just really tired. James is sure to wake her the fuck up though.
Her name's Mary. She's my wife. She's dead. I'm not crazy. At least, I don't think so.
Realizing she doesn't want to be in the same room as this man, she makes her exit, but before she can, James asks about the knife she's carrying. Fearing she might stab a bitch, she asks him to take it from her.
No!
Ha, psych! Nah, I'm kidding, you can have—
No!
Fearing she out-weirded James just now, Angela promptly sets the knife down and dips out. Because we don't need to worry about inventory management in this series, we add her knife to our back pocket and take it out every now and again to admire it for a bit. Before making our exit, we note the torn photo on the floor and spend the next few minutes gathering keys. I pummel another mannequin while it stands between me and my exit, but that thing is the least of my worries because I walk in on Pyramid Head at the wrong fucking time. And even worse, the door locks behind me. This starts our first boss fight that has James running from one side of the stairwell to the other, avoiding Pyramid Head's massive weapon while taking pot shots at him until he starts to head downstairs. Don't get too close though, otherwise he'll turn around and take another swing at you. After narrowly avoiding that, we allow Pyramid Head to exit through the door downstairs, which lets all the standing water out and gives James a route out of here. A few minutes later, we encounter that bratty little girl outside and ask about the letter she's holding, but her attitude hasn't changed a single bit and she runs off telling James he never loved Mary. Trying to process what she meant by that, we find Rosewater Park, where James believes his wife might—
Mary?
Name is Maria.
Close enough. James is flabbergasted at her resemblance to his late wife. Her flirtiness definitely doesn't help with his confusion either.
Feel how warm I am?
Maria asks why he's here and he admits he's searching for his wife, making her question why considering she's dead.
Oh yeah.
Now that James has snapped back to reality, or close to it I guess, he recalls the Lakeview Hotel as another one of their special places.
I'll bet it was.
Released in the Greatest Hits version on the PS2 and included in the Xbox release, there's a short side story called Born from a Wish, where we play as Maria. I don't have it in my version, so I won't be including it here, but it gives us some insight into Maria as a person and what she was doing leading directly into her meeting with James in the park. Not wanting to be alone, she accompanies James while he heads west to get to the hotel, and he does what Harry Mason wasn't able to do for Lisa Garland by successfully protecting Maria from being harmed. Unfortunately, the road is destroyed, forcing us to look for another way across, but by coming down this way, we find a corpse that marked the bowling alley down the street as a location of interest. We add a better melee weapon to our arsenal while using the 5 rules of dodgeball to get around flying mannequins. We approach the bowling alley, however Maria hates bowling so much she'd rather stay outside. Inside, we cut to a scene showing the little girl, who we learned is named Laura, questioning Eddie while he hogs that bomb-ass looking pizza all to himself.
You're just a gutless fatso.
God damn, she fucking sucks. During this conversation, we find out Eddie is running from something and believes no one will forgive his actions. Look, I'll forgive anything if you give me a slice of that pie, bro. But attention-seeking Laura waves bye-bye to us and we leave Eddie to smash that pizza himself while we rejoin Maria outside and trace Laura's steps to a dead end. Luckily for us, Maria knows the way around. She just needs to find the correct key. James, you filthy pervert. We traverse through a strip club, taking note of James' remarks when examining the liquor bottles. Back outside, we watch Laura enter Brookhaven Hospital that housed the mentally unwell, with several notes detailing violent patients that require extreme caution to patients that are more of a threat to themselves. Inside the hospital, we're introduced to what is probably the second most recognizable enemy in the series. The bubblehead nurses and some mannequins allow me to increase my kill count to over 40 while I explore the hospital gathering clues and items in order to locate Laura. At a certain point, we find a bed that Maria finds too comfortable to pass up, so James tells her to take a little nap while he's forced into one by Old Triangle Face. Unbeknownst to that monster, he actually did us a solid, putting us in the same area that Laura can be found playing in. Now that she's cornered, James asks how she knows about his wife, but she's worried he may yell at her. "You deserve it, you little brat, but I promise I'll keep my cool."
I was friends with Mary.
You liar!
James quickly apologizes for losing his shit there, and they begin to leave, but Laura claims she left a letter from Mary and needs to go back and get it. She leads him to a set of double doors and tells him it's inside a desk in the very back of the room, then shuts the goddamn door behind him. Something else is in here, and the little asshole won't let James out unless he says the magic word.
Snotty little brat!
I don't think that was the magic word she was thinking about, James. This starts our second boss fight against the creatures known as Flesh Lips. All monsters were animated by Masahiro Ito because they only had the budget to mocap the human characters. Ito having to manually animate each monster was definitely for the best, as their creepy, unnatural movements lent to the overall unsettling nature of the game. Using the shotgun found earlier in the hospital, I add 3 Flesh Lips to the count without getting hit, but as soon as it's over, the sirens blared and we cut to James' POV as he's wheeled out on a gurney directly into the other world. But that won't stop us from stomping on even more nurses to increase my kill count to over 50. We pop into the room we left Maria in real quick, but all that's left are some empty medicine bottles. James wonders if she's sick like Mary was, before heading downstairs and getting yelled at by Maria.
You couldn't care less about me, could you?
No.
She claims she was almost killed and demands he stay with her to protect her while they try to find Laura. He inquires why she wants to find that little asshole. She can't explain it, simply saying she feels responsible for protecting her. On that note, we explore the dark hospital together to uncover more items so we can leave this place behind us. But on our way out, we find ourselves in a very narrow hallway with our tetrahedron-headed foe. Luckily for me, Maria acts as a buffer between us, taking little jabs from his spear while I book it down the corridor into an impatient elevator that only allows passage for one. Maria screams for James, but he's unable to help as Pyramid Head comes up behind her and we listen to her final pleas before being skewered. After wallowing on the floor of the elevator for a bit, James reluctantly stands up and walks to the director's office where he obtains some clues on where to look next and marks those locations on his map. While he finishes that up, we spot Laura casually sauntering out of the front door and we do the same. But when we go outside, she's nowhere to be found and James is left with his thoughts. He again ponders if Mary is even here, but vows to find her despite his doubts. I gain a few kills during my night on the town, but run away from most of them, especially in this tunnel on Saul Street that contains an enemy called the Mandarin. The sounds in here made everything on my entire body pucker up, which sent me sprinting to the end in a panic. I stop in Neely's bar once more to find a fresh message directed at James with a super rude suggestion on how to find his wife. Eventually, I'm able to enter the Historical Society where we find an interesting painting. Further inside, I face off against some lying figures that get stomped out of existence, but then I find myself trapped in a well after jumping into it like a fool. I examine every inch of the wall and locate a weak point I can smash. Soon after breaking through, I add another 2 kills to the count before James gets the urge to go diving into even more strange holes, which sends us to Toluca Prison's cafeteria. I'm sure in most cases, James wishes he had company in this town, but probably not here when we shine our light on an unhinged Eddie.
Killing a person ain't no big deal.
He tells James he killed the guy on the left because he made fun of him with his eyes. He's sick of letting everyone walk all over him. Mentioning a stupid dog he claims had it coming. Not exactly sure what he's talking about. I'm ready to get as far away from this guy as possible, but then he says, "JK James, that guy was already dead," and exits the room. The prison gets my kill total up to 80 with mostly lying figures, except for one of them, which wound up being a harmless enemy stuck in a cell that lets off some very human sounding grunts when shooting him. This level contains some fantastic environmental storytelling throughout, with some additional paintings found inside a cell, some seemingly simple moments leading to jump scares, more details on the history of the town, and finally another appearance by our stalker at the gallows. I find a rifle behind the warden's office and use the most random set of items to unlock the path forward, where James makes a discovery nobody in their life wants to hear. After jumping down even more holes, we find a more reasonable mode of descent that takes us to the labyrinth.
You remind me of the bay.
Not that version. This version is much more confusing and terrifying. While I prowl the narrow corridors, I successfully bump my kill total up to 91. Getting a little lost turns out to be way worth it when I find Pyramid Head's weapon and take it for my own. After a strange puzzle, we find ourselves in an even stranger situation with a very much alive Maria waiting for James behind some bars. He doesn't understand how she can be there, and she claims they simply got split up in the hospital. She brings up his forgetfulness, providing an example of that time he left a videotape they made in the Lakeview Hotel. This entire conversation has James bugging, because he has no idea how she could know that, and has to ask who she is.
I'm not your Mary.
Alright, well, bye then. On our way out, we find a bloody newspaper that provides details on a man named Thomas Orozco and his brutal death. This information comes into play as soon as we walk through the next door when we hear Angela Orozco scream.
Daddy, please don't!
James enters to see Angela in a catatonic state as a revolting creature harasses her. The imagery in this room tells the entire story. Seeing the look on Angela's face while the holes in the wall show something thrusting inside it is truly disturbing. It makes you feel for the poor girl as we start our fight against the monster known as the Abstract Daddy. It falls after a few shotgun blasts, and Angela gets the opportunity to assault it during its dying moments. James tells her to relax, which is a huge mistake any married man should know not to make because it has the exact opposite effect. She accuses James of being nice for a single reason, or he could do what her dad used to do instead. But he denies her accusations and again attempts to comfort Angela as she dry heaps from the trauma. She smacks his hand away and claims that Mary didn't die from an illness, and that James didn't want her around after finding another woman. She storms off while James is left by himself to figure out this puzzle. There's a lot to love about this game, but one feature I really appreciate is the varying difficulty options. One complaint about the first game was the difficulty in some of the puzzles. There was a certain vagueness to some of them that made it hard to decipher. Producer Akihiro Imamura wanted to make the second game accessible to a wider audience and presented 3 difficulty options for both gameplay and puzzles. So in situations like this, the solution changes depending on the difficulty option chosen. There's a story written in another room that provides the clues needed to solve it. I pull the corresponding rope and take the key to unlock some handcuffs stopping me from advancing, where I find a white door that leads into the room containing a dead-ass Maria. With no clue how this happened, we leave James to mourn at her side for a bit before finding a graveyard that contains some familiar names. Walter Sullivan is the first one, which we read about briefly back in the apartments, but more interestingly are the 3 open graves that name off Eddie Dombrowski, Angela Orozco, and finally our protagonist, James Sunderland. Since James has a fondness for jumping into strange holes, we might as well hop into our own grave, which takes us to a long hallway that puts us into a freezer with a crazed Eddie. He rambles about the guy he just killed who deserved to be shot for telling Eddie how ugly, fat, and disgusting he is. Moving forward, he declares that anyone that makes fun of him will wind up dead, and James takes that as his cue to ask him if he's nuts.
I'll kill you, James!
James, your timing is fucking terrible, dude. This begins our battle with Eddie, and I decide to utilize a new weapon here by bashing this weirdo with Pyramid Head's knife. One hit causes him to run into the neighboring room where he hides behind the hanging meat while telling James about his childhood where he endured severe bullying. This all led to him killing a bully's dog, which he admits he enjoyed doing. And when the bully charged him, he shot him in the knee and listened to him cry. Before the fight resumes, Eddie tells James to quit acting better than him because the town would not have called him here too if he was innocent. This is where I tally up my first death of the game, after being shot by Eddie a few too many times. But the second time around, I ditch my gun and equip that big ass knife again for the kill. Despite Eddie's claims, we see James isn't like him, because even though he was attacking us, James shows remorse for killing a human being. Afterwards, we emerge outside behind the Historical Society building. I step into a rowboat down the dock and cross the lake to the final area of the game. James mentions the hotel hasn't changed a single bit in the last 3 years and heads inside. Directly to his left is the map with a note written on the room he and Mary stayed in. If you check the letter she wrote here, you'll notice something has changed. In the next room over, James gets a little fright when Laura bangs on the piano. This time, however, she's much kinder towards him and asks if he found Mary. She wants to find Mary too and hands over the letter she got, but has a request.
But don't tell Rachel, okay?
Who's Rachel?
Laura fills James in on the lore, saying Rachel was their nurse and that she stole the letter from her locker. It's addressed to Laura and meant to be given to her after Mary's passing. It ends up saying she would have wanted to adopt Laura if things would have turned out differently and wishes her a happy 8th birthday. James questions Laura on when that was and learns it was only a week ago. This information makes James question things, wondering why he believes Mary's death was 3 years ago. Laura mentions another letter, but finds out it's missing and runs off to locate it. This leaves us alone again to begin exploring the hotel where we find find out that videotape Maria talked about is being kept in an office somewhere in the building. It's time to search for that because we don't need some sensitive shit being uploaded to the hub. The hotel is large, but it doesn't contain a whole lot of enemies. I kill 6 more to get my kill total up to 99 before eventually finding the videotape alongside a can opener that we use to open a can of light bulbs. What the fuck? Finally, we unlock the way to the 3rd floor and use our room key to open the door to our special place. Inside is an ordinary room. James notices the VCR on the floor and pops that sumbitch in. I get ready to blur the screen because who knows what these two videotaped. It starts off innocently with Mary telling James how much she loves it here, but it signals things to come as she has a slight coughing fit. It cuts to James showing up at her side to plant a smooch on her forehead right before asking her to sniff a pillow. After realizing that Mary died by his hands, James sulks in the chair for a while until Laura comes in and asks if he found Mary. He admits that she's gone and he's the reason why, earning himself Laura's hatred again. The girl runs off and that's the last we see of her. But while James sits there, he hears Mary's voice reach out through the static of the radio, pleading for his help. James leaves the room and finds the hotel in serious need of some maintenance. It's not what it used to be and appears to have suffered a major fire with leaks all over the place. I make this monster leak its life force into the standing water in the basement before running into Angela in one of the stairwells. We approach her as she admires a painting that would fit in with the decor of the Hewitt house. She turns to James and mistakes him for her mom.
Mama!
Only after embracing him does she realize James ain't her mama and apologizes. She shows some appreciation for saving her earlier, but admits she wishes he didn't. She echoes the words of her own mother by saying she deserves the horrible treatment she received growing up, and eventually asks for that knife back, but James refuses to give it to her. With nowhere left to go, Angela starts to walk up the staircase while James remarks on how hot it is.
Yeah, shit's on fire, dumbass.
She's a little surprised he can see the flames too, and leaves us with these haunting words.
For me, it's always like this.
Angela to me is the most tragic character in this game and one that made me feel a great deal of sadness listening to the abuse she endured. She's played by Donna Burke, who wrote and dedicated a song to the character years later titled No One Can Save Me. It's an apt name for such a tortured character. This begins the final stretch with a strong hint we should probably save here. James enters the nearby room as the camera pans up to reveal 2 pyramid heads holding Maria captive. I love that he matches her energy there, but it's going to take more than screaming to save her as Pyramid Head number 1 impales her with a spear. How many times is she going to die? By this point, James no longer needs anyone else to punish him for his sins as he's ready to face them head on. I spend a few minutes running around the room taking shots at them with my rifle until eventually they congregate in the center of the room near some familiar looking marks on the ground and finish the job that I started. Even though they technically did it to themselves, I'm counting them anyway because I'm not letting a couple kill-stewing fuckos try to knock my count down. Directly after that lies a long hallway that plays a recording of James and Mary that sheds some light on the relationship after she was diagnosed. She was understandably scared and angry that her life was being taken from her, but she took that out on James as well. It ends with her pleading for him to comfort her.
Please, James. Tell me I'll be okay. Tell me I'm not going to die.
Afterwards, we head upstairs to our final encounter, and depending on your actions earlier in the game, the woman waiting for us will be either Mary or Maria. In my case, it's Maria, and James tells her he's through with her, but he's going to have to prove that after she transforms into a monster resembling the flesh lips from the hospital. I shoot her down, and while she lays there muttering James's name to herself, I tell her to get my name out her mouth and bring the great knife down on her for the final kill of the game. We find ourselves with James by Mary's bedside back at their home. He asks for forgiveness, and she comforts him by saying she wanted to die anyway. James couldn't watch her suffer anymore, but there was some selfishness in his actions too. Mary's illness forced James to take care of her, completely changing his life as well, and he no longer wanted to do that. He watches her die again and picks her up, carrying her down to his car and begins his drive to Silent Hill. This indicates her body was inside the car at the very beginning of the game. We cut to a black screen with James finally understanding why he came to the town. He believes life holds nothing else for him without Mary, and drives his car into the water with one final statement.
Now we can be together.
The game ends with Monica Taylor Horgan's voiceover as she reads Mary's full letter. It's a somber note to James detailing her fears and own self-hatred for how she looks and feels while being sick. She knows she treated him poorly and regrets that, but despite how things ended, she would do it all over again.
James, you made me happy.
On that somber note, we transition from this masterpiece into the final numbers. I finished Silent Hill 2 with a total of 103 kills. Despite them being illusions dreamed up by James, they were very real to him, and like the previous game, our primary finishing weapon was our foot, clocking in 69% of the kills. Nice. The lying figures were the most encountered enemy in the game, with 52% of the total kills coming from them. I died once, and like the last game, I could have easily avoided it if I went into the menu to heal. In order to get the in-water ending, however, I needed to spend as much time with low health as possible, ultimately preventing this from joining Resident Evil and Miles Morales as the only no-death playthroughs on the channel. At 103 kills and 1 death, that gives us a kill-death ratio of 103. I beat the game 1 minute faster than the first one at 6 hours and 49 minutes. That gives us a kill on average every 3.97 minutes and a death every 409 minutes. Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the best horror games of all time for good reason, but it wasn't considered an immediate classic upon release. Many were disappointed it wasn't a direct sequel to the first game, which ultimately led to the direction the third game took. After some time, however, people began to accept Silent Hill 2 for what it was, a standalone game that dives into the human psyche and the devastating impacts of the circumstances of one's life can have on them. I'll be playing Silent Hill 3 next, and as always, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.